Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to do a stamp along here. I have a request to use stamp number 332, which is this little cobbled path type of image, and we're going to build it around, or put it amongst, I should say, some birch trees. Okay, so let's see how we're going to do this one. That's going to go that way. Let's go with this birch over this way, right here. You don't have to do a lot of composing. Things can go into each other, so you don't need to worry about kind of structuring too much. I mean, it's good to know the gist of things, okay? This is going to be a path, and it's going to be amongst some trees, like this, okay? But don't stress out about having every little thing. I'm just thinking about three components right now. Trees, flanking, the path, okay? We'll add other elements in there, but that's all I'm thinking about at this point in time. Now, I know the line pretty well, or very well, of course, being the designer for it, but this is the way I approach things, though. I don't think everything ahead completely, okay? Because you have to let things kind of develop as you go, too. And I just think about a foundation here, okay? All right, so we have our two trees. You could have used one or the other two and just stamped both of them twice, okay? All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to grab your path. Now, this path right here is something that I call a visual lead-in, okay? It's something that leads the viewer into the scene. So in between here, you can choose other types of things. Let's say if you don't have this 332F, you can put like a stream in here or something like that, or you can have a road or a dirt road coming right in here and just stamp it right in here, okay? So it's not a composition that's like specific to this design right here. It could be anything. You could just leave it open like that, okay, if you don't have it. And I'll show you what we'll do after this, okay? And then you can choose to put whatever you like in there. Okay, now I'm using just dye-based inks right here this is, for the most part, a matte paper. It's a little bit of a silk weight. My dimensions here, 4 1/4 by 6 3/4. It's an odd size. It was just kind of a scrap piece, and I thought, let's use this one. It's a little bit bigger than, your 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 here. It just gave me a little bit more space this way. It's not quite a slimline card or something like that. Okay, now here's the thing. See, I'm going to put this right in here, about like so, I think. So this little bit right here is going to overlap my trees, so all you do is you just kind of wipe it off like that a little bit. And then we're going in like this, stamping it out. It's overlapping a little bit over here. Don't worry about it. That's, it'll just be some tone in tone, basically, okay? All right, now we have this area right in here, which we can use some other types of imagery, or we can also go for another, maybe, impression of our trees right here. Okay, now see this right here? So this one kind of interferes with this. So what I'm going to do, let's take a wet paper towel, and I'm going to clean off this one right here. I don't want an impression of it, okay? Let's see if I can get off all the ink. Sometimes I don't, and then you get a little ghost image. But even if you get that, don't worry about it, okay? Because we're going to be adding in a lot of other things in here. So if you get a little bit of residual ink showing in that space, that's not going to matter, okay? Don't worry about kind of the, I guess you can call it the structural aspects of scene building. You might get some things that are going to be an overlap, which would be really bad for, like, say, outline styles of designs where you want everything really clean. But Stampscapes designs have been made tonally, okay? And then you use a lot of extra things to fill in. We're going to color and things like that. So the tedium does not matter, okay? That small stuff is not a significant part of the end result, okay? Now, naturally, we want things built well. Okay, now see that little, that trunk right there is not going to be going into that trunk. So see, I can see right through there. And then I wiped off the bottom of this a little bit, and I'm positioning. I don't want it to go too far into that 332, but it's not too bad. See, it goes right in there, and it goes tone and tone. No masking needed. Now, of course, I wiped off that other tree that was over here, but that's all we really needed to do. Sometimes there is need for a mask, but by and large, I don't use them. I don't know. Some people think, oh my God, it takes so many practice. It takes a lot more effort and things to be masking everything off, careful coloring, than no masking, no kind of, avoiding going in between the lines and stuff like that, in my opinion. Okay, so that is that. We have our foundation set. Now, we could do some additional foreground if you like. Maybe we'll do a little embossing on this one. I think that should be fun. Okay, let's do something here. Let's play around with some colored pencils, okay? I'm really enjoying my Prismacolors these days, especially since considering the fact that they've been in, I don't know, kind of mothball state for so many years. I don't know. I've had them for a very long time. I just haven't used them, at least to this extent. Okay, now I'm looking at this. I think I could use a little bit of extra texture in the background. This is the sedge filler. It's one of the real key images in terms of just the blending of imagery together, okay? So I'm just going like this. You might notice I'm just going right over my trees because this design has been built airy enough, right? And these are tonal designs, right? So see how that really fills in? And it's not like you say, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of sedge filler over everything, okay? Now, when I'm stamping this, just go with a nice light touch, okay? Like this. See, my finger is kind of doing the pressing right here. And you can go for multiple impressions, then you have your whole forest floor filled in like that, okay? All right, so that is that. Easy enough, I hope, so far. Some people say, oh my God, it's so hard. I know it takes years of practice. No, it doesn't. And I know that because I've taught thousands of people, and if it was like really hard to do, then I would be really a horrific stamp designer. And I don't know, we've taught, I don't know, thousands of people, including very young kids. But sometimes, though, the youngest ones are people that haven't stamped before. It's easier for them because if they've kind of have some kind of long inset habits, this goes against that in many ways of how they've been taught to stamp and color and stain between the lines and masking and frisking and stamp positioners. And I get it, those are good habits to do for certain types of imagery, but this is much easier imagery to use. And it's not some kind of like mystery. You just have to kind of get it, used to not doing such kind of tedium when using it. But I've seen it before. People just are not used to it. And, but I don't know, it takes them like 2 seconds to learn once they do it. And I've seen it before. People are like calling their friends over, hey, Joan, look at this, and they're doing this masking with a paper towel or something like that. I've heard people say, hey, I'm never masking again or something like that. I'm thinking, well, you have to mask out certain types of designs, like if they're outline designs, but not Stampscapes for the most part. There's a couple designs that I do mask off, but very little. It's usually just a 2-second torn paper towel. Okay, so we're filling in, but here's the thing too. Here's the thing that I'm doing that a lot of people do not do with certain times of stamping. I'm not coloring in every little thing, okay? I'm retaining some areas of light, okay? So my coloring looks like this, okay? It's like this, at least in terms of this grassy area, okay? So where you retain light like that, you are lighting your scene. And you're saying, well, wait, where do I retain that light? Where do you color it in? Think about it more like checkerboarding, okay? It doesn't really matter where you leave the light, as long as you leave some of it, okay? So here's just a general thing. At the base of some trees like this, okay, I'll make things a little bit darker, because that's where, you know, the shadows would be from, that are being cast by the tree trunks and foliage by the tree, whatnot, okay? And it gives those trees a little bit more mass, okay? Now, notice I'm going fairly light with my colored pencil here, too. So see that? What I do is I just bring things into focus very slowly, okay? It's pretty methodical, and that's how I don't really get kind of unforeseen types of areas, developments, or undesirable ones. And it's because it's hard to do that. And if I'm going like this, then, you know, it's a lot more precarious kind of exercise. But when you're just kind of building things up really slowly like that, you can watch things develop, you know, in a very kind of gradual, very careful way, okay? You might call it kind of the opposite of something like a brush calligraphy, you know, where it's like, you know, you get what you get. Watercolors, too, in some ways. You know, the best of watercolorists, you know, where they're doing very spontaneous, you know, gestural types of marks. Bold ones, too, in many cases, okay? Okay, so that is that. So we have a lot of lighting in there, and that's just with one color, because we've retained a lot of light in there. Okay, now we won't be doing too much with this, but let's go with some of this sepia, okay? I like to use some browns within my greens, all right? It makes it a little bit more earthy and natural, okay? Rather than having things come out too kind of, you know, kind of hot green or something like that. All right. And now, the first color is the one that we're going to get the most amount of coverage with, okay? Because it's the lightest one. All right. So, don't worry. I mean, I spent a lot of time with that previous green, but these other ones will be kind of much faster. Okay, now I'm going in and I'm putting some of this color on some areas of these rocks, but then, like the green, we'll leave some areas nice and light. Now, if you want to know where to also, kind of some hints on where to add your color, look at the designs themselves, and where the designs have tone in them, you can reiterate it with your color. And where the areas are light, you know, you can just leave them light if you want to. I would get a little bit of color into them, though, into those light areas. But just do a very light touch, and you'll get that nice oscillation between lights and darks. So I've given you kind of a head start in terms of the toning and shading of it, okay? So you might call it that. I mean, if designs are just completely open, it's kind of more coloring, you know, like an outline design where you have just this whole area and space to fill in. But here, think of it, you know, more like you're shading. Think, you know, it's kind of a different mindset. You're coloring, yeah, you're adding coloring, but you're really doing shading, okay? Or you're doing coloring and shading, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so here's some extra shading. Here's a little tip here. I usually have the lighting coming from within the scene somewhere. There's a visual lead-in right here with this path. I'm going to have my light source roughly around right here, okay? It's just a good way to do it, like you're kind of going into the light from a visual standpoint, okay? So watch what I do with this sepia here. I'm going to take this on my trees, and on the opposite side of the light source, okay, I will shade that side of the trunk, or shade the trunk accordingly, okay? So on the right side of the light source, we're doing the right side shading of the trunks, okay? And then you leave the light side facing the light source, light, okay? Now you don't have to do things absolutely uniform. I am right here, okay? I usually start off like that, but then what I do is I start filling in. You can see where I've shaded some of these trunks, okay? Because it's not going to be, you know, you're going to have foliage over this. Leaves are casting shadows, so you might add some additional tone like this in here. And we're going to add in some additional foliage in here as well. We're not just leaving it like this. This is just kind of what we're on right now, okay? All right, so on your scenes, this is the trunks. These are the trunks right here to the left of the light source. So what we'll do is we'll fill in some color on the left-hand side, okay? So again, we're coloring, but we're kind of shading, right? Or that's kind of the mostly what we're doing here in terms of the spirit of lighting and coloring at the same time. Lighting is the one thing that most people kind of take a while to learn. Some people get it right away, okay? And if you kind of follow my kind of concepts, you'll get it pretty fast. But that's what people do. They have no problem. That's from the feedback I get, okay? And I know what they're doing. When they're coloring, they're still coloring entire objects. So if they see grass, they're coloring in all the grass uniformly. They're not leaving the light, okay? So it just means they need to kind of put on the brakes in terms of their coloring. All right? So just color less, because coloring less means you're retaining some of that area of light, and that'll do it for you. Okay, now, as far as colors that I'm using a sepia, I mean, something like a gray would be fine. You can use brown up on those trees if you want to. These are birch trees, so they're supposed to be kind of white, you know, in terms of that. So I'm just adding, I don't know, sepia is not neutral. It's kind of a little bit more of a warm, brownish tinge. Even like something like, this is a slate gray. You can use that. I'm going to use both of these together so that's not quite so warm, you know, it's a little bit more of a neutral. But I'll do this unevenly, okay? See this right here? You don't have to be really careful about it, okay? I'm doing it, I'm adding more down by the base, the shadows down here. See what I mean? You're kind of doing less. And if you're used to doing entire, like say here's a triangle or a square, people are used to filling in that completely uniformly. People want it nice and flat, kind of like almost like machine-like precision, you know, where there's no streaks, things like that. That looks great on a lot of different types of coloring, but for something like this, like these trees, see I'm going like this and adding like different kind of amounts of it, okay? You can add more shadows in some areas. So it's a little bit more, it's not random, but it's a little bit more free form. And see, that's how you get that. And I think that looks really good naturally. Okay, but here's the thing. You can bring this down into your rocks as well, okay? You don't have to think about it like too much like, okay, wait, grass is green. This is one color, this is another color. What you're doing is you're kind of blending colors together. You're bleeding some colors into the other areas. It doesn't mean that the stones are going to be green and the trees are going to be green and everything like that, okay? But you just merge your colors a little bit more so. What color is this? Olive green. I was going to say that's pretty warm. Okay, this olive green's a little bit warmer than what I've been using. So I'll keep that in mind, okay? Now here's the thing. When you get into your kind of medium tones, third or fourth color, and people usually get this coloring down really fast. It's usually when they move into the medium or darker tones. You know, they're moving, they're speeding up. this is where you kind of have to put on the brakes, because in the beginning you're kind of thinking about, okay, let me retain my light. And then they get going like this, and then it's like, oh my god, I lost all my light. And it's usually with the darker tones, you know, because people keep moving kind of at the same rate with a darker tone like this than they did with the lighter one. And the darker tones, you know, they darken areas, of course, faster because they're darker to begin with, okay? So just kind of put on the brakes and just keep an eye on it. And I haven't been doing this because, you know, I'm definitely used to it, of course, but what you do is you kind of, this is the way you're looking at it, and when you're toning in like this, you're focusing in a little square inch like that of wherever you're working. What you do is you hold the card out at a distance and get a good feel of the overall. You might even turn it upside down, turn it around, take a look at it from different angles, and watch your lighting like that. All right, now this lighting is just about done here, or the coloring down here. I mean, we could go more if you want to, okay? In fact, let's go a little bit deeper in the shadows, right in here, okay? See that right there? Oh, let's do something. Let's grab your black colored pencil as well, and let's do some shading on here, okay? We stamped everything in black. Now watch this right here. Let's go in and see this right where the trees kind of enter the grass. Now, I'm not doing this with a hard touch, okay? I have a very light touch on it, so I'm doing kind of more of a, I don't know, what would you call that, like a 15% gray maybe? And I usually don't go too much heavier than that, okay? And again, it's because when you go with a very light touch with your pencils like this, you're not applying very much tone at any given time, so it's not like you're going to do something and get a mistake, because if you're developing things really gradually like this, it's really hard to get a mark that you kind of don't anticipate, unless you're rushing it, and you know what I mean? It's like you're not kind of paying attention to the amount that's being did. I mean, I do that too sometimes. You know, I'm doing these videos, and sometimes if I don't rush through these, but I might add a little bit too much. Just, you know, especially if I'm doing like a quick scene or something like that, I might forget to kind of hold it out. But that being said, that doesn't matter, because I just use, if I do put too much, I just put some white pigment ink over it, and it just solves everything. White pigment ink is our friends, you know, is our friend, believe me, when it comes to kind of unintentional things. So again, even in the worst case scenario, you can just put some pigment ink, or, you know, if you really don't like something, you just stamp something over it and just cover it up. You know, you put a bush over that kind of blob of a, you know, ink, whatever, addition. All right, so see that right there? See how it's really anchored everything down like that? I mean, I'm no expert with colored pencils, but I know the concept that I'm going after in terms of lighting. Here, let's create a little bit more of a kind of a, you know, transition over here with some shadows. Remember, the light is coming from here. Let's kind of blend out this pathway a little bit more too. Okay. Now this isn't the greatest paper for colored pencils, because it doesn't have a lot of tooth, and colored pencils usually work really well with a decent amount of tooth to the paper. Okay, a little bit of texture, but this works good enough. It's pretty close to a matte, so it's allowing me to do this. But if you're using a matte, it's probably a little bit better for your colored pencils, because you can build them up. As I start building up a lot of color in this, it starts to build up too much, and it's not going into the grooves. So I kind of, when I'm doing this, it's almost like I'm kind of removing some of that buildup of ink or wax. All right, so that is that. Okay, now let's go in here and let's add in some extra foliage and things like that. I want things to be kind of bright and exciting in here, so I was thinking about doing some embossing on here. All right. I have these 3mm paint pens like this. I'd really recommend a set of these. They're very inexpensive, and they can add kind of a nice dynamic element to your pieces. Now, as far as I can tell, these paint pens these days, the Artistro and whatnot, they don't clog. Okay, now I haven't had these sitting around for like 3 years or something like this, so I don't know in terms of that type of longevity, but they do very, very well with, I don't know, just sitting around, because I think that the paints are relatively thin when you let it sit around, okay? All right, now these are, I'm going to make some birch kind of foliage, okay? Now, maybe I should stamp out something first down there and kind of build it up on top of that. Let's do that, okay? I'll do that in one area. Let me go grab my leaves stamp. Okay, I didn't grab my leaves stamp, although this has leaves on it. I just grabbed the oak branch small. Okay, so I'm just going to stamp this in, a medium green. Okay, bamboo leaves. Just take any type of green, though. Maybe not something too light, though, because we want these pens to contrast against a little bit of a darker background, okay? So I'm just going to stamp this right down in here. The wax of the colored pencils will kind of provide a little bit of a contrast, or resist, I should say, a resist with the wax. But this is just kind of meant for just, it fills in that area there. Okay, now sometimes I have, this as a significant shape within the space, but now it's just being used as kind of textural filler. Just to make this, this portion go faster, okay? So let's go back in and we'll put some of these little touches back in here, okay? I cluster these, okay? Kind of cluster them together like this. All right, and you'll get this nice kind of shimmering type of, hopefully, shimmering type of appearance. I'm going to try to do something with this one. I think I'm going to try to layer some embossing in here, okay? So I'm going with this green, all right? But then we'll bring in some yellow into it as well, okay? So it's like a little curtain of, I don't know, I call it like shimmering light. I think that when you walk over, when you walk under a canopy of fall foliage, I mean, to me, it really gives me kind of the feeling like I'm walking in kind of like a living stained glass, okay? All right, now this is clear embossing. Now, you don't have to emboss here if you don't want to, but if you have the powder and stuff, you might be pulling it out of mothballs if you haven't used it in a while. Embossing, of course, used to be huge. And a lot of people still do it, okay, but kind of minimally. I find that I might be doing it significantly these days. I mean, it adds a really nice kind of textural element to the pieces, and I love texture. Okay, so let's heat this. I don't think you'll be able to see the changes right here because it's kind of green against green, but we'll see. Alright, I don't know if you can see that, little shiny little beads of color. Okay, now that looks semi-okay, but it's the yellow that's really going to contrast against those greens. So hopefully now, with this next color of yellow over the top of that, that you know, that green background will really pay off in terms of texture. Let me sweep some of this excess I don't know. I take it embossing powder's plastic, right? Excess plastic off my desk. Okay, so here's the yellow here. So hopefully, here's what I'm going for. See, if I laid down that green before, which is what I've always been doing with these pens, and then I put the yellow on top of it. Since this one is still a little bit wet, I mean, I heat set, but even when you heat set it, when you put the yellow on top of it, it kind of merges in with the color underneath. Maybe it's doing it visually. I'm not sure if it's doing it physically. And the yellow doesn't stand out as much. So I think by embossing and really setting that green like that, I have a feeling, this is I speculate that this yellow will really stand out in higher contrast against that green, but we'll see. Okay, so again, I'm kind of clustering here a little bit, or a lot. I think I might do something too on the bottom of the scene with embossing to get that depth going. Now, I don't think I want to do 3 layers of embossing, but I'm kind of contemplating using a little bit of white in here too. Okay, and this is kind of fall, so let's put a few of these down here too. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, that yellow on the grass looks pretty good. You know, having these little textural elements like this that are raised, I always kind of mention this, but it kind of takes you back to kind of what is the kind of feeling that you'd want to go for. Okay, this is going to be the VersaFine Clair here. Let's go for that kind of that stronger kind of 3-dimensional element down below as well as above. So let's go with the Clair here. And you know, the Clair is going to have a better chance of the embossing powder sticking to it after stamping. Okay, maybe, you know, maybe if you lay that down with a dye-based ink, maybe it's still wet enough at this point in time to add that on. But so this paint pen here, I mean, it doesn't dry so fast, so it's giving me time to, you know, sit around and do these other things before adding the powder in there. Okay. All right, so let me see. Oh, that white. Let me grab the white one here as well. Now this one, okay, this one's going to merge with the yellow up there. Okay, because the yellow is still wet. That's why I don't feel like doing another layer after this yellow. So let me just add a few little highlights of white in here. It's kind of like doing a reverse mark. You have the yellow and the green in there already. And then you're adding the white, kind of, it's like the white of the paper back over the top of it. Okay, so let's see. Let's go with our powder. I'm just kind of curious to know how much I'm going to be doing this embossing going forward on my pieces. It really adds a nice dimensional element to the pieces as far as depth goes too. So I don't know, is this the first one I've done with colored pencil? I'm not sure. I can't remember. I just started doing this like last week. It's like I can't even remember. Okay. All right, so then we have our kind of frosted leaf, bottom foreground element here. This is what I'm learning to do here. Fold that over, otherwise it's all gritty on the top. My blotter paper there. Fold it over, then when I start doing this, it's not blowing all that kind of residual embossing dust everywhere. Okay, let's see. Move my hand around. All right. I think we have a pretty good, I don't know, amount of depth. All right, now look at that amount of depth right here. Just from a textural standpoint, everything's kind of flat, but these are shiny and raised, but plus they also capture that light. So these just, the embossed stuff, I mean, even when showing it like this, you can't tell they're raised, but I think there is like a big amount of kind of visual depth that's being created here. Okay. All right, I think that is it. My card's starting to bow from kind of the heat here. Just counter it, but we're going to mat this and whatnot. Okay, so I think I am going to stamp these characters here, these little hikers. Maybe I should have done this in the beginning, because now there's wax down here from the colored pencil. My water-based, dye-based inks, I don't think are going to stick to that, okay? So I'm going to go with my Brilliance black. I don't want to do these in the VersaFine Clair either, because they're oil-based. I don't know if they'll stick to this, but I know my Brilliance black will stick. They can stamp on non-porous surfaces, okay? And wax covering paper is kind of non-porous, so. Okay, let's put them, I'm going to put them right in between these trees, kind of on that path. Okay. I'm going to hold this down a little bit longer than normal, just to get that transfer going on, and for that ink to kind of start to dry a little bit before I pick this up, just to make sure that I get a good impression of it. Like I said, it would probably have been a good idea just to have stamped that out from the beginning, but so be it. All right, so there they are, like so. Okay. They stamped out a little bit lighter, okay, but that's okay, because if they're lighter, see, the things are darker in the foreground and lighter in the distance for that sense of depth. Okay? All right. So, and plus I'm going to use my white pigment ink anyway. Okay, so let's see here. Let's reiterate lighting. Okay, so here's the thing. on trees, it's not too hard of a concept now. I'm going to have this area in here, the lightest, okay? Or as my kind of source of light. So these trees, what we did is we darkened in one side of the tree, right? Now let's take, now this is a smaller white pen. A lot of people have asked me about these white pens, these paint pens. And a lot of you have it then. So on the side of the tree facing the light, don't do it over everything, okay? But just kind of add some of this white and get rid of some of that line on the side of the tree facing the light source, okay? So see right here, I'll just kind of thin this line out a little bit. I don't want to eradicate it, but we'll just illuminate a little bit more like this, okay? All right, you see that? I'm not getting rid of everything because we still need a little bit of a sense of, you know, the structure of the tree. All right, now on the other side, we'll do the opposite. Remember, the lighting is coming from here, so on this side of the tree, you just get, you know, you just kind of you de-emphasize, I guess, the side of the tree, again, facing the light. You de-emphasize the edge of that part, okay? Like so. I've heard the term kind of like no line stamping or something like that, or no outline. And this is kind of the concept of that, okay? It's getting rid of that line. So see, these trees look a little bit more dimensional now that they don't have the outline on both sides, okay? It's heavier on the darker side, but, you know, for the most part, it's gone in there. Okay, so let's go with some additional white pigment ink, okay? I'd really recommend a white pigment ink pad if you don't have one. And if you don't have one at all, I'd recommend the Brilliance, because you can use the Brilliance on just about any surface with the standard style of white pigment ink, which I love as well. But you can use these on certain surfaces, okay? With the Brilliance, you can use it on every surface. The Brilliance does dry faster, though, so maybe it's not as good for, like, embossing, okay? Like if you're doing something on matte paper with Brilliance, but for something like this, it's just really great. Okay, so my lighting is in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some additional light in that space. I really need to re-ink this pad here. Okay, let's do that right now. I'm tired of saying that in every video and kind of forgetting to do it before I start a video. Okay. That should do it right there. It takes me like 2 seconds, and it took me like several videos to get around to it. Okay, now it's real goopy, so kind of dab in there, tap off before you take it onto your scene, okay? All right, so adding it in like so. Watch out if you've just re-inked, because it's really kind of light. But I'm adding some light into these areas, okay? And let's add some around some of these trees. It just kind of makes the feeling of a scene, the kind of emotional tone of it, it makes it a little bit more dreamy when you have kind of lighting in there. If you watch any kind of movie, anytime they're out in like some kind of forested area, they have the fog machines rolling kind of like at full strength. You see all this fog kind of going in the background, and it doesn't even have to be a foggy night. It could be just, you know, pure day. It just makes the scene kind of that much more dynamic, or the set, I guess, in those cases. But watch for it. Any type of a forested thing, you'll see it all the time. I don't know about every time, but it seems practically every time there's fog machines in forested settings. Okay, so you see that right there? Kind of at the base of these trees, all right, like that. And see right around in here, I put some of this lighting like that. it just kind of brings out the lighting much more. And let's put some at the base of the hikers, like they are kind of hiking in a low-lying mist, which I haven't done too much, but I have done that, and it's like really cool when you're walking around in this area where there's like a bunch of fog or mist like coming up like 3 feet off the ground. It's just really a kind of a magical kind of thing. Back when I was in school, kind of taking night classes too sometimes, walking back, there was this one parking lot that was kind of back along this football field, and it was just like a long kind of pathway over the parking lot, that particular parking lot, and there was some nights there would be this fog kind of rolling off of it, and it was kind of just cool to see. All right, so there you have it. We'll format this into a card, but a lot of depth and a lot of fun with that embossing there. And there you are with the 332F rose. There's your kind of visual lead-in reference. If this is a stream or something like that, I wouldn't put the hikers at the end of it, but you can put any kind of thing like that, little animal and whatnot. But let's get this formatted into a card and see what it looks like. Okay, we've given it a little bit of a border around here, that white border, like that. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I have some pre-folded envelopes, and I had a green one that's kind of the same general value, you know, light and dark of green as what's going on in the scene. But I want to go with a complementary color here in this purple to kind of create a little bit of contrast between the scene and the colors. Sometimes when you do like, I don't know if it is purple the complementary color of green, or is it orange? I kind of forgot. But I don't know, it can change kind of the colors of here. You know, this almost looks like an Easter egg hunting type of thing. If we put like a little basket in that kid's arm, that would be kind of cool to put a few little cutout eggs around here. Wouldn't that be fun? For an Easter card for, you know, kid or grandkid or something like that. Okay, so let me find, I'm going to put a quote stamp on the middle here, so let me find a good quote stamp for this piece. Okay, in the woods we return to reason and faith. Be almost interesting to put it like right here or down here, but in a little cutout. I'm going to do it on the interior though. I usually wouldn't go for 2 quotes. I mean, you could layer down something on the outside and on the inside, but just in terms of kind of sequential aesthetics, I think I'd do one or the other. I'm doing this one in eclair because this paper right here is just plain matte, so I need, and it's dark, of course, too, this dark purple pre-folded card. This is a 5x7 pre-folded card, so it didn't exactly fit my scene dimensionally that well, but, you know, enough. God, I love how VersaFine Claire stamps out, just in terms of the detail. I better heat set that, though, just in case so it doesn't print up here. I tell you what, let's do that, and let me just put a piece of paper in here just for now so I can close this up. And let's take a look at this card here, okay? Alright, so we have our birch trees flanking the path here, the cobbled path, leading right up in here. No masking, of course, throughout anything, right? And see, okay, now here's the thing that's really subtle on here that people aren't going to notice, you know, if you didn't watch this video here, but let's look at the oscillation of light and dark background green color. Okay, it's very subtle, okay, because I didn't go dark, you know, with these greens in the background, but you see that band of green back here? Let me switch things right here. Okay, so you see this band of green right back in here, back how faint it is, but then see how that's a little bit light in here, going through that area. Then you have this other band of color, this green in here. And there's a little slight lightness there. There's a little slight lightness going through here. And here's color again. And there's a little bit of light back here. So see how I'm kind of oscillating it? It's going light, dark, light, dark, light. I mean, it's not real dark, but there's color. And then white. I guess you can say color, white, color, white, color, white, color up there, okay? It doesn't really matter. It's not, if this was light right here and this was dark right here, it's not like, oh my God, that was a mistake. You're just kind of changing things. Otherwise, it would just be a solid field back there instead of this kind of light and dark oscillation back there, okay? And you see in these rocks here how I've left them largely light, but I have some color in there, okay? You know, I could put some more in there if I want to, but okay, but the big thing are these trunks right here. You just choose any kind of lighting source. The light source could have been over here instead, and in which case I would tone the sides of these trees all on the right side, maybe except for this one, you know, if I put my light right there. So you just decide where you want it to go, you know. And if the light was here, then I maybe have your shadows kind of coming out. What you do is you kind of aim your thing, and this is where your shadow direction would be, okay, like that way. So you'd have your shadows kind of going out this way, all right? If the sun was right here, the shadow kind of comes out this way because you aim it right there. And at the base of that, you put that shadow down there. I could put some shadows down here, but I don't know, I put that little haze in there instead with that white pigment ink, okay? But let's take a look at the fun part of this whole thing. Not that the whole thing isn't fun, but look at that. I mean, does that look dimensional to you on camera? I hope you can see some of that embossing on there. I don't know, the camera's like picking up, but yeah, you can see a little bit of it. And especially on this one right here, I don't know if I've embossed on this silk weight paper, which, you know, is kind of like a matte paper, but we have this textural change going from shiny, I mean, you can really see it down on the black ones right here. That textural change going from something super shiny to really flat, so that really pushes depth in that area, okay? This is the VersaFine Clair up here, and this is the paint pen, embossing touches, okay? But 2 layers of embossing, I don't think I've done that yet. You know, with the green, setting it embossing-wise, and then the yellow on top of it. So for me, it's a lot less work, even though you're embossing, but because, see, so a lot of times that yellow wouldn't stand out very well over the green if I just put the yellow directly on top, yellow acrylic paint directly on top of green acrylic paint. Like I said, it kind of mixes. So learning a little bit each time with the embossing element added into the mix, and having a ton of fun. It's like this learning curve that's, you know, going very angled still. With each piece, I learn something more each time, and it's just so much fun to kind of do these experiments. And of course, when the experiments come out, you know, as you kind of hoped they would, or even better sometimes, it just makes the process so much fun because you're kind of growing at the same time from a technique standpoint. Okay, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you, you know, if you don't have these stamps, hope you get them and stamp along with me on this piece, and hope you have some fun. It's using a lot of different types of materials that a lot of people already have in colored pencils and embossing, like clear embossing, so a lot of people already have that in a white pigment ink pad. You might not have the pens, but they are really fun to use, and they can add another element to your embossing kind of repertoire.